Anyway, let's get started. Manish, thanks so much for coming on board. It's really a pleasure seeing you and connecting with you again after such a long time. So thanks for being on Gap platform, and thanks for joining the as a member as well on the app. I saw that early this morning. So today's topic, Manish, is to understand how to rise to a global role, right? That somebody like you have done. And we have a lot of young finance professionals as well as supply chain professionals who are aspiring to be on a global role. We had a talk some time back from another person from Levi's, and it was wonderful to learn his journey. And I thought it would be great to trace yours. Right. So the way we do it is that we start from understanding your current role, right? And it's very interesting that you are in FP&A now, and I was just thinking from an auditor where you started to becoming an FP&A. We'll talk more about all that, but tell us more about your current role. What exactly does it entail in HP?
Sure, Rishi. So first of all, thank you for inviting. As I had mentioned, right? I mean, again, I know we know for each other for a long time. So, but thanks for the opportunity, Rishi. Talking a little about my current role. So, as you know, back in 2015, just to take all of us back in time, HP is a huge company split, right? That was a huge split that HP announced, and HP split into HPI, HPE, services portion which went to DXC, a software portion which went to Micro Focus. I decided to join HPI. I volunteered that I wanted to go with I. My basic reason was I understood the portfolio. It is HPI deals into printing and personal systems, which is your laptops and desktops and workstations. So I said,
what does I stand for? A lot has changed. I was last Inc.
Yeah, HP Inc. HP Inc. and then HPE is HP Enterprise, basically.
That I remember, yeah.
And we retain the original HP brand and logo because PC and printing is, in public eyes, basically, right? So people see that every day. So we said we'll retain the logo and then we split. So that is how I am in HP Inc. since 2015. But it's been 17 years with HP now. So FP&A, my job is I am the FP&A director worldwide for the personal systems business. So if you think of HP Inc., as I mentioned, print and personal systems. So I lead the FP&A for personal systems. I have a counterpart who leads the print. Both of us kind of, jointly own the two segments, which are the only two segments in HP, right? In terms of size and scale, HP is about $58 billion. Personal systems is about $40 billion and print is about $18 billion. My job day to day, Rishi, is just to be, and it's like any other FP&A job. I do long-term planning, I do budgeting, I do forecasting. And then on top of that, all the board reviews that happen, audit committee, compensation committee, fit committee, technology committee, CEO reviews, quarterly business reviews, etc. Everything that goes through personal systems. My boss is the CFO of the business, goes through my team, basically. So, that is what the job entails. It's a very, for finance professionals, a very hardcore P&L management job. So I kind of manage a P&L from a personal systems perspective. And then as part of that, we also manage the long-term investments and whatnots that, personal systems keep making. It's a fun job. Been in this job for now a year and a half, because one of the things I've been doing with HP is moving around. So it's a year and a half journey since the time I started, actually.
Yeah. Right. So you ended in a very interesting note that about you moving around. And, as I'm listening to you, I'm just kind of feeling nostalgic. Where I'm remembering the times we were together. And some small trivia for maybe irrelevant for the folks, but I'm just remembering that we have a very strange instance of us sharing the rent of the house, but not sharing the flat, right? Not sharing the house for about 6 months. And I think only you and me will understand what I'm talking about, but that's very strange. Right.
That's true.
Because Manish used to be in his second home those days was Guadalajara, if I remember right, in Mexico.
That is true. That is true.
Right.
That is
and other thing I remember about you, Manish, is that I think we all joined HP pretty much the same time. And you were the most vocal about expressing that you're going to leave HP in 6 months, right? And this is like, I think about 16 years back. and none of us are in HP amongst that group, and you are the only person who is there, right? And probably covered every bit of HP. So I'm going to that's quite interesting and good learning for others, So let's go back to about 15 years or so back to Bangalore when we were a young finance manager in HP. I think that team was interestingly called Asset Protection, when you had joined leading the SOX compliance in HP worldwide. It almost sounds ancient, SOX word now. It's like, I don't know how many of the young guys would even know about that whole law. But take us back there, and how did you move around? I think we also, I quit pretty early, and so I lost touch. I know that you took some regional role at the APAC level before you moved to global role. So let's start from your role in Bangalore, and then take us through there.
Sure. I think first you mentioned learnings for you guys. I don't think learning for you. It's learnings for me to keep my mouth shut, first of all. I think that's what I learned. To be candid, right? I mean, when I moved from Bombay to Bangalore, and with all due respect to the city, I hated Bangalore every minute, every second. And then, which is what prompted my outbursts, and I was quite, quite extrovert from that perspective. And I was quite aggressive, and Bombay kind of teaches you a lot about that, don't, beyond the point, you don't give it a shit as well. So coming here and you don't like the city, your social fabric is all gone. So what do? You vent. So I think I learned a good lesson that you shouldn't be venting, basically, right? You allow things to settle down. So that's learning for me. Now, keeping that aside, you are right, Rishi. We started with SOX. Most of us started with SOX. That's how I found my first industry from, PwC, where I was prior to HP, right? So SOX happened for about a year and a half, Rishi, give or take, for about a year and a half. And then I don't know if you recollect or you had left by then, but HP split their shared services business into captive and third party.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was back in 2007, Rishi.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, fair enough. If that's happening, because I was from Pricewaterhouse, I told Vivek, who was my manager, I said, look, I don't want to do captive because that's going to be boring. So I want to do third party where I can actually engage with, customers and everything. So I was named as the compliance leader for third party. So whatever Vivek or Lynn used to do on the captive side, I went over to the third party side. And that was my first change. And what it also told me, Rishi, was unlike Pricewaterhouse, where I was prior to HP, changing verticals in PwC is like a big no. You start in assurance and you die in assurance. That's all happens, right? But HP kind of gave me that thing that, I raised this thing and they made the job change happen. So I moved there. I worked with customers for about 3.5 years as a compliance leader, stroke solution architect for compliance. So like, business continuity planning, SAS 70, data privacy, stuff of that nature, basically, which is what I did.
P&G or something, those were the HP's third-party customer, if I remember.
Oh, absolutely. Nestle, P&G, if you've heard of Molson Coors, Brewery, ICI, there are a lot of accounts. And then during that year, HP also bought EDS, if you remember. And EDS added healthcare and defense accounts to my portfolio, because then EDS compliance as well was folded with, HP's BPO practice. So that's what happened. One of the things I really enjoyed about the job as an accountant, you don't get to be a sales or a pursuit guy. You're a chartered accountant, so you don't sell in pursuit unless you're with a big four where you're always doing that, right? With HP, I got to work with a pursuit team for a good 3 years, which was really nice because it exposed me to a complete different side of how you pursue, how do you make a P&L and this and that in terms of a pursuit, from a pursuit perspective. That happened, Rishi. And then because BPO was not going anywhere, I was not going anywhere in terms of, growth and whatnot, to be honest, right? So I reached out to my mentor at that point in time. I identified a mentor. I don't know if you know her, Marie Myers, who is our current CFO, interim CFO, HP's. So she was an audit leader back then. So I reached out to her and I said, I need some mentorship. And I reached out to her. She's like, why don't you keep moving? And I said, okay, fair enough. So from there, I actually went to completely in-house focused job, which was GAAP, US GAAP, basically. So we used to call it EFR, Enterprise Financial Reporting. and that team had 5 members, all based in Palo Alto. And I said, but I'm here in Bangalore. She's like, just at least talk to the person, right? So the person said, okay, I'm willing to invest, given your background and everything, but keep in mind, it's a very US centric job. I said, you know what, you know how HP life was, being on calls and this and that. So I said, that's fine. I mean, evenings and all, which I understand. So that's how I found myself doing I became the US GAAP revenue consultant for personal systems and then services business back then, which was a combined HP. Keep in mind, HP was about $140 billion combined entity. And that kind of exposed me to a completely different side, because moving from a customer facing job to an in-house review contracts, US GAAP and this and that. And that happened for a good few years, Rishi. Again, great exposure again, because then I got to work with a business before they rolled out their portfolio and everything, just to tick and tie from a gap perspective, that the T's and C's make sense basically. Enjoyed the job, but I was more on the customer side. So I mean, somewhere that thing was there, that I have to be more closer to the P&L than just a gap guy. And then again, Marie Myers happened, and then she's, as my mentor, she's like, move. I said, okay, fair enough. So I moved to my next job, and she's like, do something you've not done before. So she found a job for me where I had to manage finance IT programs. And I said, Marie, it's program management. It's like, just move, just do large scale program deployment at a company level and see what, can you manage large scale programs or not? So, okay, fair enough. So that's where I moved to finance IT program management. So all of Asia, finance IT, if I had to change some platform or supply chain and this and that, so I got into program management for a few years. And then they announced the HP split in 2015. And when they announced, Marie Myers was looking for people to move over to the US. And she's like, you've done revenue before, and I'm looking for a worldwide revenue controller. So I want you to move to Houston and lead HPI as, the revenue controller, because I'd kind of done PCs and services. So when I took up my first PC revenue consultant job, I had zero idea that one fine day HP is going to split, and one fine day PC is going to be on this side of the house and non-PC will be the other side. And that's how I found, sheer luck, if you ask me, just luck, nothing else. And Marie Myers happened to be the controller of HPI. She was named as controller of HPI. So she kind of picked me up and she said, move and you will lead the team and this and that. So that's what happened. Of course, I don't know if you're, keep in touch with the GAAP world or not, but new revenue standard was announced just about that time. So I got the opportunity to implement a new revenue standard for HPI worldwide. And that's where my experience in program management, and of course, platform management came in handy, because I was also doing S4 implementation along with revenue, implementing revenue standards. So that's what happened. And in between, because I was here in US, and of course, when you're in US and you kind of meet people and understand about the schooling and this and that got me intrigued into do something. I become a CA back in 98. So I said, me and one of my colleagues decided to apply for some executive courses here locally and see which one goes through. But we were very clear that few schools, and so in between we went for an executive education, completed that. And one of the reasons to do that was that I wanted to move closer to the business, more closer to the business. So when I came back, I spoke to Marie and my manager, and I said, look, there's something I have FP&A. I've not done FP&A before, and gets me closer to the business. So here I am supporting personal systems. I started as a revenue consultant. I became a revenue controller, and now I support the personal systems P&L. The best part about the job is not the job per se, but I get to work with the CFO of the job, which is my boss, and the personal systems president, who is Alex Cho. He runs the business worldwide, basically. So I kind of work very closely with them to understand what they want, how they want, and then kind of translate that into financial matrix. So that's been interesting. So I can say being in the right place at the right time, and venting about a lot of negativity about Bangalore and whatnots, but then finding the right mentor, luck, timing helped me where moving through this lot of jobs here, basically.
Absolutely fascinating. I was listening with a lot of, and I was totally intrigued with your journey. Very, very interesting. And I didn't know a bit of it in between that I got to know just now. One of the things that Manish, which is almost becoming a trend as I'm doing this, talking with especially the leaders like you, is flexibility and agility of movement, of taking up new roles. And I think that is kind of becoming a very strong trend of why people have risen to the global level, right? So their agility and flexibility to take up new roles, and that's what they have been advised. And it's not easy for people to do that, to shift, and especially accountants, because it puts you out of your comfort zone. It's not easy. um, now, you told us about the journey, but I'm sure there must have been a lot of hiccups also on the way, in a sense, feeling of whether you took the right decision of taking those roles. Now, what were some of the challenges that you went through in all these roles that you every time you shifted to something new?
See, first was Rishi, you're first of all, you're 100% right that you can't just wake up one fine morning and say, I'm going to become an astronaut tomorrow. Can't happen, right? I mean, so just like that, when you're an accountant, your mind works like I'm audit, I'm controllership, and I'm, tax or something, right? So your mind functions like that. And I'll tell you, if anyone of you come from a big four environment, you'll appreciate what I mean, because big four puts you in a bucket or a vertical and say, this is what you are. If you're transaction services, you're transaction services, and you grow the ranks, you become a partner. I come to HP and I've come with that mindset that, look, you got to be in that vertical forever. But when I voiced my thing and, first they allowed me to move, I kind of realized that, what, if you raise your voice and volunteer, maybe people are receptive. But that was my first change. So I think the challenges are, first, you handicap yourself in your mind that because you are ABC, you can only do this gamut of activities. I think that's the first mental block, so to speak. That's the first. So if you overcome the mental block, the second is, depending on the size of the company you work, you may find people who are receptive to that discussion or who are not, depending on where you're working. Again, HP is different in that regard. With HP, the thing was, because HP was huge, right? $140 billion. You got to find, in early on, you got to find the right mentor. And now I call it, forget the right mentor, the right sponsor, if you ask me. So right. Marie Myers happened to be the right sponsor for me. So she helped me every time I applied for a job. So of the 5 or 6 jobs, 2 I had to interview, 3 I was, headhunted and put into the job, basically. Thanks to Marie Myers. Again, I had done nothing, but she was a good sponsor for me, right? So hiccups was when you look for a job. If you look for a job which is outside your, day-to-day skill set or roles and responsibility you do, that the whole back is people are not receptive. So what do you do? But you want to do that job, right? And you want to grow. So that's the first challenge that you have to overcome. And I feel that the right sponsor can help you overcome that, basically. That's one. And Rishi, I can tell you that few jobs like the BPO Pursuit job, I thought it'd be compliance, and I know compliance, everything, I'll go do it. Trust me, first 6 months was struggle, because there was travel left, right, and center, and a day and a half, 2 days to UK, move to SFO, come back to Germany, come back to Bangalore. The reason was you were with customer all the time, and you're making your presentations on the go, and then delivering in them, and then moving to the next client. So Pursuit is like that, and I never kind of realized that at an international scale. And you got to be your very best, whether you travel 48 hours or not, no one cares, because you have 30 minutes to present and move on, and then to the next client, right? So I think all those things you don't know unless you actually get into the job. I got in the job thinking I'm a compliance guy, I can do compliance, don't worry about that, it's all sorted. But I don't think till you get your feet wet, you know what you're doing. Same with program management. I said, program management, how can this field be even challenging? I mean, and what is there to learn in program management? I mean, why is Marie asking me to go there? But once I went there, I realized what actually goes behind the scenes when you're doing S4 or Oracle or whatever implementation. I'm like, oh my God. So I think those were the challenges. I think we have, at least I shouldn't say we, at least I had some preconceived notions about few jobs. First, my mental block. Second, I can do it. You don't know what you get into till you actually get into those jobs. I think that's for me was bigger challenges. Don't have, at least I've learned, don't have preconceived notions about anything now.
No, that's very well put, Manish. I think that's true for all of us. We like to be in a comfort zone, and taking us out of there is something that makes us uncomfortable, and that's the reason most of us do not grow, and because we don't like uncharted territory. So other thing I want to ask you is, and I think you mentioned in early part of when you started telling us about your journey, is how important it is to voice out and ask for something. That I think you mentioned that you were not happy about that after some time about the BPO role, and you wanted something, and that's where you spoke out first. And I'm sure with Mary it became a very good relationship over a period of time, somebody you could go to, but also you would have people that you are mentoring under you, right? So how important it is for especially guys who are starting their journey to actually speak out and ask for something, that they if they're not happy about something or they want to grow, take up new roles. How important it is that from your own experience?
So Rishi, I'll tell you what kind of drive. I'll take an analogy to drive home the point. And I come from a joint family system, right? In India, joint family system, you know how it functions for the most part. It's very patriarchal, and senior people always drive that decision making, and you kind of, not that you discuss, also you accept and you move on.
Yeah.
What we did, and I did not rather we, I did not realize it, that this is the strong culture ingrained into that family concept as a joint family, right? Now, if you take that analogy and bring it to an organization, culture is such a thing that we don't, it's not written in books anywhere or black and white. It doesn't tell you that, Rishi, this is our culture and this is how we do. No one tells you that, but you realize it over a period in time as
Right.
you're working with the organization.
Right.
Right? But sometimes even when you do wrong, some people don't come and blast you off and then tell you, you're a piece of whatever XYZ and get lost in this and that. But some people come and work with you and say, this is how you do it the next time. And that very moment of how people are dealt, engaged, etc., tells a lot about culture. Why am I talking about culture? It is important for people to understand that while you are thinking of a change, organization A may not be ready, or B, organization may not be receptive about that, or C, organization's culture may or may not allow. Fortunately for me and for a lot of other people, you have to assess in which organization you are. What do you see culturally happening? Do you see a lot of people moving around, and is it acceptable norm or it's not? I think I'm telling you, we undermine culture a lot. But if you ask me, number one skill that people should have, personally, any level, doesn't matter director or non-director, is have you understood the culture, and then you work around that culture. So you've seen culturally a lot of senior leaders talk about people rotation, and they've themselves moved and they promote from within, and they like people who moved around. HP was one such company, or is such one such company. Why did I engage with Marie Myers? Marie Myers moves every 2.5 years to a different job, and I love that thinking. So I reached out to her. I said, "Look, this is what I want to do," and she like, "Absolutely, this is exactly what you should do." But I've seen people in HP 30 years in tax or 30 years in audit, which is fine, but HP culture allows you to move. I know companies where people they are not allowed to move. Big Fortune 100 companies. So culturally, if you try to break that barrier, it will break you and throw you out. The system or culture will throw you out. So if you ask me personally, one thing, you got to observe the culture around and then work around that culture to make it happen. It's not as easy as picking up the phone or having a mentor and then it will make it happen. I don't think so. Personally, no. That's my view. So I can't hear you, Rishi. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm sorry. So I was just saying that's an interesting point, Manish, and I want to understand a little bit more for sake of our young audience, that how can people get a pulse of the culture early on? Could you get, or is it mostly possible to understand but after looking back that this is the culture, but that's probably too late, right? It's you would have probably done mistakes, but would you have any tips for us, how can people get a pulse of the culture so that they can either get into it, if it suppose like somebody like you, HP was the perfect place, and whereas if somebody is in that hard structural silos but they want to be moving around, then they can get a pulse little earlier and move out. So one thing is obviously seeing what other people are doing, and anything else that you would suggest.
So I don't know if it's a good comprehensive list, but I very early on, I engaged with mentors from different walks of life, and I purposely engaged with mentors who did not know me or I did not know them, for the
Okay.
sheer reason that they could give me a very unbiased view.
Mm.
And when my conversations were more that, look, when I was in Big Four, I wanted to be a partner. When I was in HP, I wanted to be this and that. So how do I go there? And these mentors helped me shape and give me a lot of insights about HP. These mentors were 10, 12, 15 years in HP. They gave me a lot of insights about HP, of how you engage or how do you reach, etc. So I'd say people who are starting off, getting engaged with the right mentors in the company where they are, but not knowing them, but people who know the culture, they can fast track their understanding of the culture.
That's a
Because
good
they'll tell
point.
you, you know what, that I've gone through this, but I'm telling you this is exactly how you want to approach this.
Mm.
And trust me, HP, at least I can talk about HP. I'm not never worked for any other company. Is there are people I reached out to, like Kathy Leisjak, when she was a CFO, I sent her a mail and I said I want to talk to you. And next I know is next year admin sets up 30 minutes with me. And I never imagined that it's going to happen. I spoke to her 30 minutes, and then she's like, I'm going to connect you to Rishi, or I'm going to connect you to so and so, and go speak to them and then come back and close the loop with me. Now imagine a $40 billion CFO has 30 minutes of time for a random guy who reached out to her. But that spoke a lot about the culture, that they are so receptive and so open. So I'd say young people, I won't, I mean, when I say young, I mean, people who are starting off or mid journey should have right mentors and reach out to them to fast track their understanding of the culture. But you're right. If you don't do that, in hindsight, things become more clearer, but you don't want to go through the journey, basically. That's
Again,
what I'd say.
again, brilliant advice, Manish. Finding a good mentor and leveraging that experience is probably the best thing to do in
Yeah.
So you mentioned about joint family, and I instantly remember, and I must share this with everybody, that Manish belongs to the family of chartered accountants. So your dad, he has three brothers, all of them chartered accountants. I don't know if there are more in your family, but I know four of you who are definitely CAs. So tell us from that perspective, being an accounting is a quasi-legal qualification, right? It's very law-based, and hence it's more within the national boundaries that you gain expertise in. From that perspective, two things that I want to know: how easy it is to say you took up a role for Gap, and then you also did accounting and compliance for globally, including SOX, right? How easy it is for people to actually start taking a role beyond beyond India, and how important it is to keep yourself updated about the laws, compliance, accounting rules. Now we have IFRS and things like that. Now I understand that people in Bangalore at least are more conversant working for global companies and as in the back offices, so they are exposed. But otherwise, what are some of the general things that people should be doing to be able to make themselves easily fitting into these global roles? I mean, you had a mentor who put you in a US Gap team where you were the only person out of India, right? The rest of them were at the headquarters, right? But I'm sure it had its own challenges for you to quickly learn and come up to speed with that team, right? So tell us more about those perspectives.
So on that side, Rishi, unfortunately, there is no shortcut, right? I mean, right, I was born and bred in Indian Gap and understood Indian Gap and this and that. And with PwC, you did a little bit of foreign reporting, but not the hardcore Gap discussions. You had a form to fill and you moved on, right? So, but cut to HP, in the first job when I had my revenue consultant for PCs worldwide. So all PC worldwide $20 million deals about used to come to me, and I would review and say Gap compliant or not, and revenue advisory. A lot of reading. I have to be very honest. And before new revenue standard and post new revenue standard, things have significantly changed. But I'd say that, I mean, just taking revenue as an example, there's a lot of reading. There's a lot of reading, and I also invested a lot of time and efforts in doing a lot of online technical courses back then as well, right? So that was my learning. But one thing that definitely kept me at least aware was, as I mentioned, right? Definitely mentorship kept me aware. But secondly, I've always enjoyed reading, and I've always enjoyed reading about different stuff, right? So that's been one of my things which I like to do. So been having subscribed to a lot of different things. I at least keep to know what's emerging, not emerging, etc. That's one thing. And secondly, I honestly feel conversations like these also happen sometimes. You go and let's say I dial into some conversation you're having with someone else, and he tells something which really intrigues me. I go always search. That's it. That's been just me, my personality, right? So sometimes people love to do that. Sometimes people need to have some good friends who also tell them, why don't you consider this and that. Again, what we don't realize, Rishi, is as we are going through the journey, right? When I came to Bangalore, I thought, okay, this is it, right? I've moved from Bombay to Bangalore, but my mind was not open at that point in time, to be very candid, about different things I could do personally. When I look back at 17 years, I personally, no other dimension, I feel that just having friends like, like yourself, etc., Zamir, Deepak, Vikash, all giving me feedback or do this, do that, Vivek, my mentors, I think has helped me a lot. Has helped me a lot because that point in time you may disagree, but when you go back,
Yeah.
for ahead and you look back, maybe there was a great advice, and then you move on, basically. But reading, talking to different people from different walks of life helps you, etc., etc. And I'd say just being generally aware helps you. That's but being open about that thing, because I've seen people here in HP, Rishi, they started in audit back with me in 2004. They're still in audit. They don't want to move out, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
It's a personal
Absolutely
choice.
nothing. It's very personal choice because they want to make it to a chief audit executive. And I said, maybe you could make a chief. My personality is you could make a chief audit executive even by moving around and getting experience. But that's just me. That's just me. So it kind of depends, Rishi, completely.
Absolutely. So I'll come to some more interesting questions, including COVID. But I also want to understand something I asked Vishal as well, just about being an Indian CA, right? And how was it different, and what are things that really helped you? I know most of the people who are attending are from India, chartered accountants or otherwise. How was it different? As I'm talking to you, I'm remembering a lot of these flashback scenes. I know I was hearing a conversation between you and Zamir when you were in the. You guys were high flyers for SOX implementation, right? You guys were roaming around the world for implementation, and you were talking to yourselves and saying, what is it? How come we are becoming high flyers? We are getting this exposure, and one of the things you told me was that you attributed it to be CA first, and that's what is getting you all the all this exposure and glory in those days. It was still young people to travel so much. But cut short to my question, yeah. So, what are things that actually helped you accelerate or stand out and perform better? And some of the things that you think was we lack from or make our journey more difficult in rising to the global positions. Sounds like an interview question, is it? I'm sorry. But I'm keen to know.
I hope I have an offer at the end of the response here, basically. Let's just see.
You already joined us, so yeah, go ahead.
I think first thing, Rishi, is I'll say it again. You have to be honest about this. I think I have had super luck all through my career. Super.
I'm being modest, honestly. I know you.
Not at all. I'll tell you. I'll explain also. Hear me out, right?
Sure.
So first is SOX happened, I think 2003 or 4, I forget, maybe 2002.
Yeah.
Maybe 2002, right? In PwC, I was doing assurance and I was always telling, I'm done with assurance, I want to move. So they said, okay, we're going to make you one of the SOX trainers and SOX champions. So I was sent for a 3 month training and I became a SOX champion in PwC. So anything now where the pitch was SOX client, I would go and kind of lead the implementation. I said, okay, something happened, right? I had zero idea that HP is going to happen one fine day. Zero. Trust me. I said, okay, if this is a change in PwC, I'll get that change. So now think, exactly a year and a half down the road, Vivek Sinha, if you remember, was forming up a SOX team. And when I applied, I was offered a job because I said, look, I'm doing this. I'm a SOX champion in Pricewaterhouse, and I move. So I was trained. I had zero idea that I will come to HP and start in a SOX team. Now, so that's definitely luck. But in addition to luck, I was also, I think, if you know, there's this English saying that you don't prepare for something when the opportunity knocks. You rather prepare for it and wait for the opportunity. So I think that's what happened with me, I think. So my angst with PwC to do something different put me in SOX as a SOX trainer, and then HP happened. So that's one, right? I feel, and then second time, remember when I told you about Marie putting me into a revenue job, I had zero idea that HP will split. In your wildest of dreams also, you don't come, you don't wake up and say, okay, Google is going to split in 4 different companies tomorrow. Like, you don't. So HP split, and Marie happened to be at the right point, place, right time. I happened to be right time, right place. And she's like, honestly, I'll tell you, and I maybe if I can share, she was in India with a list of people to be hired. Most of them her mentees in previous life. So she was there in March of 2015, because the split was announced in October 14, and they had 1 year to do the split. So Marie was named as a worldwide controller. So March she came to India to hire list of people she wanted. So she actually relocated about 10 to 12 people from Bangalore to Houston that point in time. I was one of them, not the only one. But I happened to knew Marie. She was my mentor. Split happened. She was looking for a revenue controller. So things fell in place. So again, yes, I had done revenue before, and then that was again luck. I had not put that design together. It kind of somehow fell together, right? One thing I think, as you were talking about being a CA and how easy or difficult it is, to be candid, when I moved to US, it was difficult. You say you are a CA, so it's like you explain, and when you have to say it's an equivalent of a CPA, I find it's very demeaning. It's yeah, trust me, because I know what a CPA course entails and what a CA entails. So honestly, going through your grind in a CA versus going through absolutely nothing in a CPA, comparing the two is demeaning the qualification. But Rishi, what it also told me about is the country culture. Forget the company culture. Here, the culture is which college you belong to. So they have a strong affinity. Trust me, and you will. I'm sure if in India you say I'm from IIM, you know what I mean, right? Yeah. I'm Ahmedabad. I'm Bangalore. You know the sense of connect those people will have versus the sense of connect that if you are not from IIM will have.
Absolutely, yeah.
So here they're like, I'm from UT, I'm from A&M, I'm from Baylor's, I'm from this, I'm from that. So in a room, that affinity was very strong, and you could feel that even though you may be an executive, CA, this, that, Pricewaterhouse, meant nothing from a cultural perspective, right? From a cultural perspective, meant nothing. And that's when I was talking about going to a B school, right? Me and Sudarshan, one of my good colleagues here at HP, we said, you know what? We both actually came right together. We said, we'll do something here and at least get that thing on the resume, not to prove a point, but to also see that what is so different about getting educated overseas. And that's when the B school happened, and we ended up. And honestly, I think that was a good thing that we invested the time and the efforts to do it. And that's what changed the game or the dynamics completely. Because that, again, coming back to my culture point, you don't realize it till you're actually there. The culture here is, if Rishi sends a CV and I send a CV and Rishi is from the same school as the hiring manager, there is no chance I'll get hired. I'm telling you, there's no chance. And it is culture. There's nothing wrong with it, but that's the culture.
Right.
That's it.
Right. So interesting that you brought about that point, because I was going to ask you next about it. But what I also noticed as something that you have kept consistent about your nature is humility, and you are still attributing everything to luck, which I do not agree to. And I think you enabled that luck to a large extent. But the B school you're talking about is none other than Harvard, right? Where you went, and I saw a lot of pictures with some pretty girls and you in Harvard.
Yeah, that was the perk.
So this was what, a year-long intervention, or was it longer? And was it like a full-time thing?
No, so Rishi, me and Sudarshan couldn't log out of the HP world and plus stay away from family. So there's no way 2 years MBA was happening. So we decided we're going to look for some executive MBA.
Yeah.
And this happened again, as I mentioned, it happened to be the right spot for us. A,
Mm.
from a financial perspective, of
Mm.
course. B, from a staggered perspective. So it was 2 weeks on site and 4 months off site, 2 weeks on site, 4 months, etc. And
Got
you
it.
could do it over a period in time. So we said, okay, exactly what we wanted. So that's what we did. So I worked with my manager. I said, look, as long as you agree to this calendar that I'm going to be away, no emails, nothing, I'm going to go apply. So she's like, okay, I'm fine. So she kind of supported, right? So again, as I mentioned, right, although people will disagree, but again, right thing, right place, and people helping you support that decision. So she helped support the decision. So I applied, and then of course it goes through its own review process. They reached out to my manager for feedback and this and that, and which my manager provided. So I kind of got selected for that. And it was actually, if I completed it one stretch, it would have been about 10 to 11 months. I took 18 months because I took a break in between. So
Okay.
my cohort, we completed the first 8 months together, the 4 modules as we call it. And then the fifth module is what would have given me my executive MBA along with the alumni, with Harvard Business School. So I decided to take a break. The only reason was there's too many things going on the personal, office side and personal side. So I said, okay, I'm going to take a break, and then did my fifth module about a year later, 6, 8, 9 months later. So I kind of took about 18 months to complete. But from an education perspective, extremely different. Just so I can share one little fact. So the building where we used to study or the classes were was Tata Hall, donated by
Wow.
Sir Ratan Tata. So
Wow.
it was such and I spoke about that in the classes, but I said I feel really proud today
Mhm.
sitting in this classroom because that was the latest and the greatest at the Harvard campus, business school campus, and it was completely donated by Sir Ratan Tata basically. So it was really nostalgic, honestly. And again, you saw the alumni names, so you saw Anand Mahindra and this and that. So it felt even nicer to see people from your country and fellow colleagues. So it's nice. One of the best experiences I personally had. I never imagined I'll be US, going to Harvard, etc. So it was the best experiences I ever had. Of course, made great friends, from different walks of life. Never thought I'd speak to somebody from Saudi Arabia, royal family. There was one guy, so you
Okay.
kind of engage with them, and you so different, very different ball game, completely different ball game. But I'm so glad I did that. I think part of me and Sudarshan was, why is there no acceptance in this country? And then we were fighting against the culture, which was wrong on our side, because you had to understand that the culture of the country has strong affinity to which school you come from. And again, in this country, you'll realize, at least I'm sure it's everywhere, that the school you come from makes a lot of difference, if you especially in an employment scenario, because they kind of have that affinity or affiliation with you basically.
And you said that kind of changed the game. So after that, you feel more belong to that room where there's people full of, so at least there is no feeling, even if it was just a psychological or only within you, for all you know. But you felt more comfortable that yeah, now I also belong to this group and this culture.
Perfect.
So it was kind of a relief, that happened.
That is true. That is true. I think what the way you put it was absolutely right. That it was more psychological. You're absolutely right, because people around you may not have been feeling like that about you, but you felt always. And secondly, you felt as if you're kind of, it's now a relief. I've dropped the weight down. Now I feel very easy and light. But you're right. Now in the room, if I have to say I'm an FC or I'm a chartered accountant, I always, you attach I'm also kind of completed my executive education from HBS, which is of course, as you know, an HBS in a few schools which have a good reputation, at least internationally as well. That's one. But more importantly, Rishi, I'll tell you what, there are few things, and not few, a lot of things that Harvard teaches you, but there's few things that you always stay with you forever in terms of how they ingrain you in their culture, how they change your thinking about how you approach your approach to life in general, and then your approach to work environment in specific. And I think when they say it's Harvard's a great school and this and that, I've personally seen it firsthand of how and how they approach it. So it's been an amazing, overall amazing experience for me.
Brilliant. And so let me use this opportunity to ask a logical question. And we have been working on this education, continuous education or upskilling over here. And we are today in a world of online, right? So now it's great because it gives you access to those global universities that we couldn't have unless you land up there with loads of money if you're going just for 2 years MBA, or you happen to be there, right? So that's a great thing, but then there is also a thought process about its acceptability and weightage and stuff like that. So from that perspective, and being a leader, when you look at young guys coming in, interviewing, whatever, or your own team members, advising them for taking these courses from the global best universities, whether it's US or Europe or any part. Now, how do you see that? Would you advise people to take up those courses and at least learn firsthand from those professors and their thought processes? What's your advice on that?
Yes and no, Rishi. And I'll tell you, Mike, I'll explain my yes and no. So, yes, you should. I mean, at least gets you exposed to a completely different approach or way of life, I'd say, and also a different thinking. Rishi, to be again candid.
Yes, absolutely.
So, few things happened with me when I was doing CA. I was born and bred in Bombay, and doing CA from Bombay I had access to everything that I wanted from a private tuitions perspective or classes or people. A lot of people come to Bombay to do their chartered accountancy. Like they go to Chennai as well, right? So I had exposure or access to all of them, but did not give me the global exposure I always wanted, right? Thinking wasn't different. It was national level thinking, but never international.
Right.
You come to these B schools, it completely changes your mindset. Your thinking kind of becomes more international. You're not thinking India or US, you're thinking the world as a platform. So which is why I say yes. No, I'll tell you personally, I'm not a big fan of saying I'm going to add 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degree, 4 degree, 5 degree. I'm not a big fan, which is why I did my CA back in 98. I waited a good 20 years before I invested in my Harvard education, because I'll tell you one thing that helped me. We had CEOs in our room. We had fighter pilots in our room. We had priests or fathers in our room. We had somebody from the royal family of Saudi Arabia in our room. They came from different walks of life, different background, and their experience in that room when they were looking at a problem and I was looking at a problem or a case study that we're discussing was so different that confined to a room which gives you comfort factor as opposed to that room where you have people from different walks of life completely change your mind. Totally. How a member of a royal family thinks about a problem and versus how I think, who was born and bred in a middle class family, back in Bombay, is completely, totally not aligning. But what is helping you do is be accepting of schools of thought, different schools of thought. So somebody who is just fresh out of college and done CA or BSc or whatever and wants to do MBA, I'd say wait.
Absolutely.
Get some experience and then go. Right. And again, depending on your financial situations or where you are, I'd say invest in a good B school, then not. That's the only thing I'd say, basically.
Absolutely. So this is really amazing. I'm sure everybody is engrossed in your views. So great to know. Let me. It's about 8:50. So over here. So let me quickly use this opportunity to also ask you some bit of work-related stuff. And since you are in FP&A, a very probably a now beaten down question, but I'm still asking you about the post-COVID world. How has FP&A as a function changed according to you? And we have been reading a lot about this frequency of forecasting that is changing. It's no more quarterly, monthly is probably very, very quick daily, weekly kind of a forecast. From the finance perspective, how has the life changed for an FP&A professional or a function as such in this post-COVID world? And how do you see going from here?
So let me respond slightly differently. As I told you, I look for a change every 2.5 years, right? From a time perspective, I've spent about 16 or 17 months in the job, in FP&A job, but I almost feel like 5 years, almost. And I'll tell you the reason. So you are 200% right, actually. When I joined the team, I knew that I had to do long-term plan, which is 5 years, then annual budget, then forecasting every quarter and monthly, tracking this. I said, okay, yeah, that's a job I can manage. I had zero idea again that COVID will happen when I'm in FP&A. So we did 3 long-term plans in the year. We did 2 budgets in the year, and forget the quarterly forecast we do. We do simulation. I'm telling you, we do stress testing, or we call it, scenario planning here at HP almost every other week, almost, because the market size keeps changing. Market size changing means what is my share I want to gain, and my price I want to keep, which markets I want to play in, etc., etc., etc. changes. You have one vaccine announcement and market size changes. Versus you see that Europe is under lockdown, market size changes. Versus China announces that I'm going to open up my economy, or Singapore announces. So we've been tracking all these things, and then things change by the hour, basically, right? It's been a fun ride, but trust me, if someone's not kind of used to that kind of an environment where every day you're churning deliverables out, and sometimes what you feel as FP&A professionals, although it's not right, and at least I feel, is it's so much of paper exercise you do, a lot of paper spreadsheet exercise. The good thing is, just like any other Fortune 100 companies, HP is invested in a lot of tools and technology that we use, which is more prescriptive, so it helps us do scenario planning and all. So we can kind of go and maneuver, and we are kind of, again, investing a lot of money in terms of getting the technology onboarded sooner. So I think COVID has definitely told a lot of finance professionals or business that, look, you can't work in a spreadsheet environment forever. Not possible at all. Definitely not possible. Yeah. That's how life has changed, and I'm sure it's the same for most of the FP&A professionals. I'm guessing.
Right, and I remember an incident when I just joined HP. I don't know if you had also come on board by then or not, and we were part of this group called Managed Services that existed those days. And there was a guy called Steve Smith who was GM Finance or something, or FP&A director then, probably your role. And he came to Bangalore office with his entire staff, and we were in awe. Wow, once you become a director in HP, you have this, you have staff walking with you. And we were all in awe of him. He was almost like, Steve Jobs or Carly for us that in those days. And he mentioned something very interesting. And he asked us, how many general ledgers HP has. And we never thought there could be more than one, and he told us there were 32, and that was 31 more than needed, so so is that still the case? I mean, I have no track of that, but are you still dealing with that large volumes of data?
So fortunately, I don't deal on the general ledger side, but as you know, an FP&A professional has to pull information out of the GLs all the time. So there is a system interface, but there is this entire system architecture team that takes care of the GL. Very recently, we did a large-scale deployment of a new ERP, so it kind of brings us to one single source of truth, and that's about it. And we, again, as FP&A, we have this systems that we deal with, which is an interface between the GL and how we pull information, which is what my team most of the time does. But once the information is there, how do you deal with information? So that's where tools and technology help you. Like tools like you hear companies like Alteryx and Anaplan and this and that. So they have tools which you use from an AI perspective, prescriptive perspective. They manage a lot of large amounts of data for you, basically, in terms of various slices and dices.
Right. So that also makes me think that FP&A guys need to be are exposed to the technology, especially the new ones. In terms of whether it's BI or data manipulation, presentation, more than the accounting function. So from that perspective, how important it is, and how have you been kept yourself updated with these new technology perspective to be able to do our jobs in FP&A, and how important is that?
So again, I can tell you, so this is where I think, so HP started to make these investments in RP and AI since separation, I'd say, since 2015. And again, thanks to Marie, that she kind of thought about that this is where I want to be leading my finance team. So we actually have an in-house team of data scientists that we can reach out to and work with them. And if I have a project that I want to automate and completely put it on AI, they work with us and do that. So I've personally engaged in few such projects for my FP&A team, where we have automated completely the forecasting, and it gives us a lot of scenario planning the way we want it. So that way, I've been fortunate to keep in touch because we have an in-house team. Plus, you track a lot of these companies like Automation Anywhere, UiPath, and Anaplan, this and that. So because I got exposed to RPAs and AI, I kind of track all these things and understand what tools and technology they have. And plus, these people also come and make a lot of pitches to you in terms of we have this, we have that. So that gets you exposed in terms of what all is available out in the market, basically.
Great, Manish. Absolutely fascinating, and I think you and I can talk for hours, as we always did. But since we are hitting towards the end of our time, I would also let others ask some of the questions. I'm sure a few people are just waiting for me to stop my discussion and make them ask questions. So I'll just take a pause and allow some of the other people who are on the call to allow to ask questions. Guys, go ahead. Anybody who wants to.
Rishi, can I go first?
Sure. Yeah, we can hear you, but go ahead.
Awesome. Manish, I think it was a very great overview of your entire journey. And I think what resonated with me very well was more moving away from the concept of a mentor to a concept of a sponsor. I think as you grow in your career, journey, I think you move away from mentorship to sponsorship, because you definitely need somebody to be able to give you that direction and that sense of that confidence that you may not have done something, but you are equipped well enough to be able to settle in that uncharted waters, if you will. So my question really, Manish, is I'm going through that phase personally, in my professional juncture right now. And where I really struggle is, I do have mentors and I do have a couple of sponsors, but somehow for a reason that is not known to me, maybe I don't know where to look or I'm not looking at the right spot, that shift of moving within the organization is, something that I am not able to successfully do. So what would your, advice be for people like me who want to make it happen? And, we are trying, but somehow it is not falling through. And I know a lot of times you mentioned about being at the right place, right time, and the right opportunity. I know it plays a part, but is there something more that I should be looking at and I am not? With about 18 years of experience now and 16 plus being in FP&A, but diversified within FP&A.
Sure. So, Padma, first of all, I don't think there is a simple response out of the book saying that you follow these 5 steps and you get there. No, I think you actually covered the response in your context and the question as well, Padma, because you're right. Mentor is someone who talks to you, but a sponsor is someone who talks about you. And there's a sea of difference, because the sponsor plants you, like Marie planted me in few roles. Like, Manish, you're going to do this tomorrow, and she spoke to everyone behind the scenes, and that things happen, right? So if you find the right sponsor, Padma, I think that's what will definitely help you in moving around. The thing also is, from a sponsor perspective, it's a quid pro quo, right? It's a reciprocal relationship. They also need to know what's in it for me, right? From a Marie Maya's perspective, what's in it for her? Why is she helping me? Why would she come to Manish and not to Rishi or to someone else and help? So what's in it for her? So what do you bring to the table from their perspective? That's also we will keep into account. Let's say you're pursuing a role in audit, and I'm just going to make it up, right? When you're pursuing, it's not about saying I want that job, right? It's I'm Padma. Here's what I've done 18 years or 16 years. Here's what I see going on in audit. Here's how I think I can make a difference if I go there, and here's my plan. And if I get an opportunity, I would definitely want to make that change happen. So when you give the moment you say you're almost 2 decades in finance and FP&A, then people expect that what do you bring to the table when you move around. So it's not that you're a fresher and you go there and you learn.
I think that's a very, very valid and...
Sorry, go ahead. I think I cut you short.
No, I was just saying that's a very valid call out, Manish. I think beyond the point, it is about what you bring to the table and what can you offer with all that experience and what you can apply from that, and how do you make that pivotal journey from, you know, and how do you add value incrementally by going into a role. You know, the one challenge that I find, Manish, is, you know, despite the organizations being large, some of it, like the ones that we are in the GIC world, the options are extremely limited. So the move, like for example, you spoke about HP, and I think Dell, IBM, you know, these organizations offer an array of roles that you can go into, but somehow I feel very constrained in a GIC environment where I find the opportunities somehow get very limited, or you know, they are actually shrinking. So I think that is another thing that I'm kind of working through. But I think to your point, it is about how you you know, position yourself and your contributions through your sponsor, who can then, you know, with confidence speak about you and speak for you. I think that you made a very brilliant point there. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks.
Anybody else? Manish, truly, I love that answer as well. Find a sponsor more than a mentor. If it can be 2-in-1, best. And how can you make your sponsor win as well? And I think that's the reason they will sponsor you. Brilliant. That's a big takeaway.
No, thank you.
Another few seconds. You don't have to be from finance to ask. You can be from any function. Right. So good thing is, Manish, since you are now on the GAP platform, and this is a recorded session, a lot of people would be listening to us post facto on a recording. And let me ask you, can I promise on your behalf that in case they have any questions when they listen to you, can they reach out to you on the platform? We have a chat function as well, or they can just put a post, and you would be able to possibly reply to them whenever you find time. I think that would be helpful. But it was a lovely discussion. It was really good, and it was nice to know your journey. A lot of takeaways for everybody. A great humble man from our soil over there in US, making it big. Great to know, very inspiring, and all the best to you, Manish, and we'll catch up with you soon again.
Thank you, Rishi, for the opportunity. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for joining in. Good night to everybody and good day to Manish. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.